Hello, I want to welcome you to the Flathead River Bridge, the Perma Bridge project online open house. My name's Brandon Coates. I'm with RBCI, and we're going to start the online meeting here in just a minute or so. I was going to give folks a little bit of time to get into the presentation into the Zoom here, and then we'll go ahead and get started in a minute. All right, I think I've given it a couple of minutes, and still got a couple of people popping in here, but we'll kind of go ahead and get started. Want to welcome you to the online public meeting. My name's Brandon Coates, and I'm with RBCI, and I'll be helping facilitate the meeting today. What you can expect for this presentation is we're going to run through the project, talk about the project, the construction of the project, and then following the presentation, there'll be a Q&A session you can participate in. And if you want to locate the Q&A button that should be on the bottom of your screen, if you pop that button open, it'll give you a kind of a chat box, and you can submit questions at any time during the presentation. And we'll hold all the questions to the end, and then we'll answer them all at the end. But yeah, feel free to put those questions in at any time, and we'll get them answered. So the MDT and the project team that we'll be introducing will present all of the information, and then this presentation is being recorded, and we'll have a copy of the recording that'll be posted onto the project website. So you're invited to ask your neighbors, coworkers, and friends that couldn't attend the session to view the presentation on the website, and they can submit comments there as well. We'll have that up here next week. We'll get that posted, and you should receive an email when that goes out. And so now I'm going to go ahead and turn the microphone over to Daryl Williams from MDT to introduce the project team.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daryl Williams. I work for MDT, and I am the District Construction Operations Engineer for the Missoula District. I will be assisting our project manager, John Benda, who is also on the call with contract administration for this project. MDT's mission is to serve the public by providing a transportation system and services that emphasize quality, safety, cost effectiveness, economic vitality, and sensitivity to the environment. MDT maintains a staff with the resources and technical expertise needed to perform the workload for the majority of the state's transportation projects. However, when MDT does not have the resources or technical expertise in-house, we often hire consultants for specific work. Consultants are an extension of MDT staff, capable of providing additional skills, experience, expertise, and quality work without increasing our in-house staff here at MDT. They are managed by the MDT Consultant Design Bureau and work together with the MDT project team and management to deliver the project. This is the case on this project, as MDT has selected a design build team consisting of Morrison Merrily, Frontier West, and RBCI. Morrison Merrily will be the designer on the project. Frontier West is the contractor, and RBCI will be doing all the public relations on the project. I would now like to introduce our team members for this project. When I introduce you, if you could please turn your camera on when introduced. And I'll start out with myself again. I am Darrell Williams, I work for MDT, and I am the district construction operations engineer. And I thought I had my camera on, but I didn't. But next off, I'll introduce Beth Kappas.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, my camera's not behaving very well today. But I'm Beth Kappas, one of the design engineers with Morrison & Merrily working on the project. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. Chris Anderson.
Chris, I think you're still muted too.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Chris Anderson, project manager for Frontier West on the project.
Thank you, Chris. John Benda, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Benda. I'm an engineering project manager with MDT. Report to Darrell Williams, and I've been working on this design build project with Brandon Graff, who will be introduced soon. I have a small team of people, 7 or 8, that administer and inspect road, bridge, and sometimes even rest area projects in the Missoula district. And it's good that you're here today. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Let's move to Brandon Graff.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brandon Graff. I'm with MDT in the alternative contracting section. My role in this project is alternative contracting engineer.
Thank you, Brandon. Tyler Manning.
Hi, I'm Tyler Manning. I'm with RBCI. I'm part of the public involvement on this project, and I will be running the Q&A for today's meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. And Brandon Coates.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Brandon Coates with RBCI, and we are doing the public outreach and public involvement on the project. So we will be the main point of contact for communication with the project team, and we will be the ones that are responsible for getting project information out to the public and to the media. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Next slide, please, Brandon. All right, thank you. So next, I would like to take just a few minutes and talk about MDT's Bridge Bureau and the services they provide. The MDT Bridge Bureau is tasked with keeping Montana's bridges safe, economical, and reliable. The Bridge Bureau is organized into 2 sections, the Bridge Management section and the Bridge Design section. MDT's Bridge Management section provides condition inspection and load rating evaluation for more than 4,500 public bridges in the state, which includes state, county, and city-owned bridges. The Bridge Management section also evaluates and analyzes overweight permit loads and performs bridge maintenance on state-owned bridges. MDT's Bridge Design section provides design and engineering management on bridge replacement, rehabilitation, and preservation projects. The Bridge Design section also establishes and maintains design criteria and standards, participates in research projects, and promotes design initiatives to improve bridge performance and value. Now I'm going to turn it over the presentation to Brandon Graff. Brandon Graff is our alternative contracting engineer. Brandon?
Yeah, thank you, Daryl. And again, this is Brandon Graff with MDT. MDT is rehabilitating the bridge that carries secondary highway 382 traffic over the Flathead River near Perma. The bridge is a 5-span, 653-foot long bridge. This bridge was originally constructed in the early 1960s and needs repairs. And Beth will get into the specifics of the repairs that will be completed on the bridge later in the presentation. The amount of wear and tear on the bridge is normal for a bridge of its age. One thing to note, the bridge is currently safe to drive on. MDT is completing similar bridge rehab projects around the state that have similar aging issues. This project will extend the service life of the bridge. Next slide, please. MDT partnered with Frontier West and Morrison Merrily to evaluate and develop plans for the needed repairs and construct the improvements that will extend the life of the bridge. The project is being delivered through a method called design build delivery. This delivery method allows the design engineer and the construction contractor to collaborate on the design and construction. MDT often uses this process to expedite the development and construction of a project. This project was also a good fit for the design build process because the collaboration between design and construction staff promotes innovative methods for repairs. The Frontier West Morrison Merrily team was selected in March of 2023 through a competitive best value selection. The team hit the ground running immediately after award with design development activities. Some of those design activities included field evaluations, alternatives analysis, plan reviews, environmental documentation, and coordination with local agencies. This week, we are at the final stage of the design process in completing construction plans and documents. As we turn the corner from design to construction, a handful of construction activities can be seen on the screen occurring in 2023 and 2024. The current schedule is suggesting that construction could begin as early as July 24th of this year. And Chris Anderson will be elaborating a little bit more on the construction schedule later in the presentation. Next slide, please. MDT will communicate and coordinate with local officials from Sanders County and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes, CSKT, to ensure critical services will continue in the project area throughout construction. The project team will meet with emergency responders to ensure any potential emergencies in the project area and could be responded to in a safe and timely manner. I'm now going to turn the mic over to Beth Kappas from Morrison Merrily to tell you a little bit more about the development of the project.
Thanks, Brandon. Yes, we just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit more in detail about the planned improvements associated with this project. So I think this slide kind of points to all the main features of the work that we'll be doing out here. And I think Brandon noted this in his discussion on the project, but really the immediate need that spurred this project is the bearing replacement and the girder repairs. And we have some more photos of what that looks like, but that's sort of the big component of work that we're trying to accomplish here. In addition to that, we'll be painting some portions of the steel superstructure of the bridge that's out there, and just some information about bridge painting. Really, that operation is associated with mitigating like rust and corrosion and preventing rust and corrosion on these steel elements. And so it's less related to aesthetics. And with that in mind, we're really looking at doing some select painting of this structure where it's most susceptible to rust. So if you see in the top photo there, that side picture of the bridge, there's actually some dark spots on the steel kind of immediately above all the piers in the water that support the structure. And this particular bridge has joints in the driving surface at all those locations. And as you can imagine, as those joints deteriorate over time, like water and dirt and sanding material gets down below onto the steel, and that's what really initiates that rust. And so to help mitigate that issue with this bridge, we're just going to be painting regions around those joints to help that rust issue. in addition to some of the work that we're doing on the bridge, there'll be some other light roadway improvements. We're paving the approach roadway off both bridge ends, and we'll also be putting new guardrail up, which is a really common thing to see go in alongside a bridge rehab project. But there'll be new approach guardrail along the roadside leading into the bridge, and then there'll also be new rail across the bridge, sort of bringing those safety features up to modern standards or more close to modern standards. We also are going to be doing some repairs to the driving surface. So the bridge deck, that concrete roadway piece basically that we drive on, is going to get an overlay to just kind of freshen up that aspect of the bridge. And then also, while this bridge project is aimed at, kind of rehabbing some of the necessary elements of the structure, we're also completing some safety improvements alongside this project. So as you guys who live in this area know, 382 comes into Highway 200 at a T intersection here, and 382 traffic is required to stop while Highway 200 traffic continues past that intersection. And so we plan to install some transverse rumble strips in the driving lane that approaches that intersection, just to give drivers some more advanced warning of that stop coming ahead. And there'll also be some signage provided to again, warn drivers of that stop ahead and that intersection with Highway 200. So big picture, that's kind of what we're looking to accomplish here. And then I think some of the following slides get into a little bit more detail. So I think I'm ready for next slide. So this picture kind of provides an overview of what a bridge overlay typically looks like. So again, we're looking to sort of freshen up the surface of the driving lanes across this bridge. And essentially what we're planning to do is remove kind of like the top inch of that concrete deck, and we'll come back and pour an overlay of new concrete. And the idea is we want to remove about an inch of concrete. And that really allows us to get down to sound concrete, because the top of that deck can deteriorate over time. And then once we get that roughened surface, it really helps the new concrete overlay adhere to the bridge deck. And so there is that stage of demolition, I guess, that occurs before we get into placing that new concrete. And kind of an interesting aspect of this project, we're planning to complete that concrete removal through hydromilling. And so essentially what we're doing there is using really high pressure water to remove that top layer of concrete. And there are a lot of benefits to using this water removal technique as opposed to like a mechanical means of removal. By using high pressure water, we reduce the risk of damaging all the existing reinforcing that's embedded in the bridge deck and that we want to keep. Whereas if you're out there kind of with like a grinding machine, like a mechanical miller, there's a lot greater risk to that rebar. So this is kind of a cool operation you guys will see out there as you're driving through the project location while it's under construction. So next slide. So this picture, I think, tells a lot more about the girder repairs that we're planning. And so again, this is a really important component of the project. So MDT performs routine inspections of all their structures. And I think through those regular inspections, identified these defects essentially that have been forming in the bridge girders. And so the bridge girders are like the big steel beams that hold up the bridge deck roadway that we drive on. So these are kind of like the main load carrying elements. And as you can see in the photo here, so this is kind of like the bottom of one of those big girders where it sits on the pier. But you can see there's starting to be some deformation in the web, and that's like the tall, skinny part that gives it its depth. And then also at this location, it's kind of hard to see in the photo, but a crack has started to form between, like essentially severing that bottom flange in half, and it's starting to run a head-on line into the girder. And so obviously these are some undesirable defects to have in your load carrying elements. And the bridge, while this isn't like a structural concern yet, it could definitely become an issue for the structure if we don't do something to repair it and mitigate what's causing this. And so I guess maybe next slide. I think this picture kind of answers the question of, what are causing these defects that we're seeing in the steel members. So I think kind of an interesting, maybe lesser known fact about bridges is that bridges move. And so there are actually a number of components that are designed in bridges to allow the structure to move. And one of those things are the bridge bearings. And so that's what the superstructure is that, kind of carries the road, sits on when it, kind of connects with its foundation elements, essentially. So in this picture, the bearings are like those larger steel devices that look like pins, essentially. And yeah, thanks, Brandon, for pointing to that. So for this particular bridge, those bearings are designed to handle rotation and translation that's needed to accommodate thermal contraction and expansion. So like as the bridge members, heat up and cool down just with changes in temperature in the air, they need to like grow and shrink. And by allowing for that movement to happen, we can really alleviate some of the stresses that could build up in the structure. By restraining that, imposes a lot more force on the structure. So that's kind of like why we need to let the bridge move. And then these fancy devices are kind of like how we accomplish that. But as you can see, these old bearing devices are made up of steel, and they really rely on just those big like steel knuckles to be able to rotate about each other, and then the rocker plate underneath to be able to move back and forth. And as things start to rust over time, and as you get dirt built up in those elements, they just end up seizing up in the long term. And unfortunately, that's pretty common. I mean, bridges have a harsh life. So as these bearings start to seize up, the bridge still wants to move. And so that's why those girder ends are getting pretty beat up. And that's why we're seeing those defects. So our goal out here is to replace the bearings and repair some of that damage we're seeing in the ends of the steel girders. And so how we accomplish that is we're going to be placing large jacks, like a lot like the jack you use to replace a tire on your car or whatever. It's really similar to that, but just a lot bigger. We're going to be placing one of those right next to that old bearing. We're going to jack the entire bridge up off of the substructure, and we're going to pull that bearing out and place a new bearing in there that is functioning. And the new bearing is actually made out of essentially like a big chunk of squishy rubber. And as you can imagine, that rubber accommodates bridge movement through just deformation of the rubber, essentially. And they're much more robust to the elements and weathering, and aren't really susceptible to corrosion. So that's a more common system that's implemented nowadays in modern bridges. And so that'll be going in here to sort of alleviate the problem. And then this jacking operation is what's really requiring the short closure of the bridge. And so as you can imagine, jacking the structure off its support is done much more easily and much more safely without the addition of vehicle loads on top of the bridge. So that's kind of what's driving the need for a really short-term closure. And Chris is going to talk in a little bit more detail about that, but just kind of wanted to provide a little bit more information about some of that work that's going on underneath the bridge. Okay, so maybe next slide. So as with any transportation project, there's a number of environmental considerations that are evaluated and assessed throughout the project development process. And NEPA and NEPA are really kind of the guiding regulations, but MDT does pursue a very rigorous process to establish what factors may influence the design and construction of the project. So just kind of a few interesting things that have been considered in the development of this project. So first off, I think migratory birds are definitely a thing. You guys see swallows building their little nests everywhere. We've actually been out on this bridge since early this spring, removing nests to deter those migratory birds from nesting on the bridge this year while we're going to be doing work out there, because we don't want those nested birds to be disturbed or at risk because of our construction operations. So we're trying to mitigate our impact to migratory birds through that effort. So that's something you may have seen on site already. Another species of concern in this area is the bull trout, which is a threatened fish species that is native to the Flathead River. And our big goal to lessen our impact to the waterway and those fish is really to stay out of the water when it comes to our construction activities. So we're going to be building false work that gets us access to the bridge to do repairs. But that false work is essentially like suspended from the structure with no need to build like temporary supports in the water. So that's really helping us lessen our impact in that sense. And then also another cool aspect of the project is the equipment we plan to use for part of the painting operation. So repainting a bridge requires full removal of the existing paint, and that's usually done through sandblasting. And so on this particular project, we plan to use a steel grit as like the sandblasting medium, and that steel grit can be cleaned and recycled with special equipment. So we're planning to implement that operation for paint removal, which really reduces the amount of landfill waste that is coming off the project, because a more typical like sand medium for sandblasting is single use and goes to the landfill. So just wanted to give a high level overview of some of the environmental considerations associated with this project. And then I guess maybe with that sneak peek at some of the construction operations, I'll pass it off to Chris to talk more about what to expect.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. As Brandon had alluded earlier, we plan to start as early as July 24th, construction out there. What you're looking at is a proposed traffic control that we'll be implementing at the site. That's kind of a condensed view of it, just so it's easier to see. But those first signs on the ends, you'll see those will be extended away from the work area about 3,500 feet will be the first warning signs. And that will alleviate concerns of that the westbound traffic on 200. There's kind of a blind corner, as you can see. And so I know that was a concern of how much warning we'd give the public leading up to the traffic control, so they have time to, slow down and stop and not affect the work. So that should give us that should give the public adequate warning leading into our work. We do plan to do most of the work under one-way traffic with limited delays. The one lane should be flowing most of the time, but there may be certain times where we're moving equipment or materials on and off the bridge where we may have to shut it down for just a few minutes, and then we'll let traffic flow after that. So limited delays one way most of the time. We will close the structure completely for one weekend, and right now that is expected the last weekend of July or the first week in August is when we plan to make that closure. It should just be one weekend. That's what we're planning. The first aspect work we got to do is we got to install some additional steel members to the existing girders to jack the structure up, as Beth alluded. We got to attach those to the girders so we can fit jacks under there to pick it up. And that will take about a week. And we'll pick the bridge up. We'll come in and we'll heat straighten those members and fix that cracked area and replace the bearings. And that should all happen in one weekend as currently planned. Right after that, we'll move into the hydro demolition of the structure that Beth talked about. As I said, we'll do that in one lane at a time. We'll mill down the surface, pour it back in, let it cure, put traffic on that side, swap over, and do the exact same thing. And then we'll come in and we'll replace our expansion joints, as we're doing the hydro demolition in halves. After the hydro demolition is done, we'll move into barrier replacement. This work will take 6 to 8 weeks. So when we're starting, this will push us into, early to mid-October of construction. And that will pretty much wrap up things for the year. And then next season, we'll come back and do the painting of the structure, and then the final pavement markings. The reason for the painting in the second season is that the recycler that Beth talked about needs to sit on the bridge right above the painting operations. So that will be under one lane at a time. And we won't be able to do that with the hydro demolition, and that work taking us late into the fall isn't conducive to painting. So that's the reason for the split construction season for the work. And I think,
it's my turn here, Chris.
okay, I forgot. Sorry, Brandon.
Nope, no worries. This is Brandon Coates with RBCI again. And I just want to touch base a little bit on how we're going to be keeping the public informed throughout construction. Keeping everybody informed is a priority for MDT. There's a variety of methods that we're going to use to communicate with the public. Some of those methods include direct mail, the news media, social media, radio ads, email and text messages, and then updates on our project website as well. Another great tool for staying up to date about construction or road conditions in general throughout Montana is the 511mt.net website or app. Those are updated regularly and in pretty quick order when there's construction or road incidents or activity that might impact traffic. So it's a good resource to keep track of. As Chris was saying about the closure coming up, as soon as we have those dates, we'll be getting that information out to the public as quickly as possible. Email and text updates are a great way to get that information quickly, but we'll also be sending information out to the news media, doing some advertising, and then Chris's team also has the variable message boards that they'll be putting signs up at junctions like clear up to Hot Springs, and those variable message boards will be relaying traffic and construction information as well. So I am the main point of contact on the project, and my contact information is on the screen currently, and it's on the website too, for getting a hold of me. So you can reach us at the project phone line or send me an email and we can get you signed up for email updates, or you can text the word Perma, PERMA, to 866-434-0866 from a smartphone to receive the text messages. So, and with that, I think we're at the conclusion of our presentation portion of today's meeting, and we will begin the Q&A session here in a moment. And again, I'll keep this contact information on the screen for you to get while we're answering questions. And Tyler, do we have any questions coming in from the public yet?
Yes, we had a question from Sam. He asked, will there be a warning light for westbound Highway 200 traffic to let them know that a vehicle is at or turning onto Highway 200? He said this is a very blind area, and Brandon Graff was going to answer that question.
Yeah, excuse me. Thanks, Tyler. And I think Chris maybe saw this question came in and kind of answered what the temporary traffic control setup is going to look like. And as Chris mentioned, there's going to be some warning signals about 3,500 feet upstream of that intersection to slow traffic down during construction. But as far as the permanent solution, kind of after the project is completed, we're not going to have a signal at that intersection. Because this is a bridge funded project, as Daryl kind of alluded to, when he kicked things off at the beginning of this meeting, it is a bridge project. Bridge funding is fairly limited, so we're really trying to keep the scope of work to the needs of the bridge. And while Beth said that we do have some rumble strips in there, that was actually value added in their proposal, as they were going to be milling up the end of the bridge and the roadway section of the bridge. There would be they had a good opportunity to put some rumble strips in there. And so long answer, but we will not be having a signal at that intersection.
Thanks, Brandon. And if anyone else attending has questions, just click the little Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen and you can type your question in there and I get someone to answer it for you.
And if you don't have a question today, but you think of one later, feel free to email it to me as well. My email address is Brandon, BRANDON @rbci.net. It is on the screen there now too. And we will get those questions answered, or you can give us a call as well. So like I said, any questions that come in, we're the main point of contact as the public involvement on the project, but we rely on Beth and Chris and John and Brandon to get us answers so that, and we'll get back to you so you don't have to try to figure out who the right person to ask is. So doesn't look like we have any other questions coming in currently. So if you feel like you got your questions answered already, don't have any others, you can feel free to drop off the meeting at any time. We will have a similar presentation from 6 to 7 tonight, and we'll be covering the same material. If you know somebody that you think would be interested in attending, please send them to the project website address where they can sign up for this evening's presentation as well. So looks like we'll give it another minute here. See if there's anybody else. Looks like that's a wrap for today's meeting. So thank you all. We'll see you again tonight at 6.